economic opportunities. And those are challenges that we are all confronted with, on a daily basis. And those are the kind of things what we have to fix in the next 5 years. And then together with the committee, we'll have to devise plans and strategies and say, how are we going to get to that? And what is it that we are going to do? And also what is important, Honorable Chair, I have met with individual members of your committee as a person, because I thought it was very much important that I introduce myself as a person, as an individual, so that we understand what is it that we want to achieve. And I must say it was very fruitful discussions and engagements, and the views and how they would want to contribute to the betterment of mobility within the province. And I think that is something that is very much important that we should continue doing in the near future, and make sure that we are able to use this particular platform to hold me accountable, of course, as a member of the executive, and for the members of the committee also to fulfill their responsibility. So those are the kind of things. And you would see, Chair, I have distributed this booklet as basically just to give an overview of what the department does and what has been my ministerial priorities, so that everybody has a little bit of an idea what we want to achieve and where we are heading as a department. And Chair, as we have been saying that we are not going to use, I don't want to use this time just for me to speak, and I would like the department just to go through the presentation so that I can allow the members of the committee more space to interrogate and ask the questions. And then for sure, I believe that this is the first engagement and it won't be the last. With those few words, Chair, thank you very much once again for the opportunity to invite us to come and appear before you to share our plans going forward. Thank you very much. I'll give over to the HOD.
Thank you, Minister. The committee indicated that they wanted an overview of our annual performance plan. So in lieu of that request, we are just given an overview of the first quarter performance for the department. I'll go through the different programs and take you through the information. The first quarter performance, we have just highlighted how we identify it, either as overachieved, achieved, or partially achieved. And we provide both the information on the department. So you'll keep seeing WCMD. That's how we refer to ourselves, as the Western Cape Mobility Department, as well as the Government Motor Transport, or what we normally refer to shortly as GMT. In the first quarter, there are 3 programs in the department as part of our budget structure. In those programs, there was no targets that were not achieved. There were 2 targets that were partially achieved in program 3, and the majority, over 80%, was achieved, and there was a little bit of overachievement as well that we would want to work on. Our administration program reports on our governance of the trading entity, where we do a quarterly review of their performance. We track our invoices paid, and we also assess our progress with regards to our statutory plans in terms of the National Land Transport Act, which is the Provincial Land Transport Framework. That is an annual target. So for this quarter, we have been able to ensure that we deliver 99% of our invoices was paid on time, and we have reviewed the quarter report for GMT. Program 2 is where our transport operations program is. It is the largest budget program for the department, and we run our key public transport services through that program. The one is the Golden Arrow bus service that is measured in terms of the number of routes that we subsidize. You'll see that we had a target of 1,961, which was overachieved with a little bit. Those routes get adjusted in terms of the conditions on the road, so whether there are any roads that's closed, where there are any changes in demand. Some of these routes can be combined, so it's not a static number. In terms of the number of kilometers subsidized, we have subsidized more than what we planned. We planned just over 7.5 million passenger kilometers to be, vehicle kilometers to be subsidized, and that was overachieved by 121%. So we also provide services in George through the Go George service, where we are currently supporting the 4th phase of the rollout of that program. I just want to reflect on the kilometers overachievement. The expected rate that we pay cabs is based on what we expect largely fuel prices to do. We set that rate before we set the APP target before the industry rates are published. So when we estimate what the fuel price is going to be, we are able to do more kilometers because the index is lower. But as the year progressed, and we now know where we are in terms of the agreed rate per kilometre, which is about 40 Rand a kilometre, our target and our actual becomes closer together. We also do regulation of the operators in public transport vehicles, and in order to facilitate those engagements, we hold hearings in terms of the National Land Transport Act. We targeted 30 hearings for last quarter and we achieved 35. That is demand driven, so we respond to what comes our way. Program 3 is largely on the licensing and the traffic management side. We do compliance inspections for vehicle testing centres and driver license testing centres. So we targeted a planned inspection of 68 and just missed it, but it looks good. In terms of our traffic management services, these are largely national targets that we report on, so there's quite a lot. We targeted to do speed operations of 920 in the quarter, and we achieved a higher amount of operations. Our weighing of vehicles in terms of the overload control weigh bridges, we also targeted 145,000 and exceeded that target. Our drunken driving operations was exceeded, and the number of vehicles stopped and checked. There was a bit of a underachievement, but not worrying. What sometimes happens is other matters, like in the last quarter, we had lots of flooding, and the law enforcement officers gets directed to support the closure of roads and those issues. So the planned operations do not always take place as we planned. I don't think I need to add any more. On the pedestrian operations, we exceeded that target where we had 16 operations. Pedestrian fatalities is a large concern for the department. Road safety awareness interventions, we exceeded that target. And then we work with schools to do road safety education for the pupils, and we also exceeded that target. Then with regards to the number of law enforcement operations that we conducted, we overachieved that target significantly. The key point under what we are doing with law enforcement is we have provided the law enforcers with technology so they are able to do a lot more in terms of the time it takes to write the ticket versus the time it takes on their handheld to do the ticketing and to facilitate the process. So we are able to do a lot more. I think those are the key reasons for that overachievement. At this stage, our student cohort that is in the Gene Low Traffic Training Centre, 138, I think is the number, and we will at the end of the year report on how many successfully completed that training. We also do traffic management evaluation in terms of a sort of a quality check on the operations that we run. We plan to do one and we achieve that target. Those are the APP indicators for the department, Chair. I'll also take you through the government motor transport indicators. These are largely annual indicators, and in our audit committee meeting yesterday, they asked that we put some benchmarks up to see how far we are so that there are no surprises, and we committed to do that in the second quarter. But for now, the number of vehicles in the fleet, the number of vehicles traveling more than 1,000 kilometers per month, that is a check that we do in terms of services, how many automatic transmission vehicles we have, and then how many the number of alternative fuel vehicles in the fleet. I know Yasir is going to want to brag that he has already exceeded his target for that one. So, but we will come back at the end of the year to report on those. What we do report in this quarter is the number of vehicle inspections that we carry out. We targeted 975 vehicles and we achieved 1,013. We have got resources in place to support us with that, and that allowed us to exceed the target. There are also some annual targets in terms of the processing of fines that people get when they use the government fleet and the losses in terms of crashes or vehicles being stolen that will be reported annually. We look at our own inward benchmarking in terms of the value for money that we give clients, and there's also external benchmarking that we do that we will do on an annual basis. And then we ask the clients, are they happy with the way things work in GMT and with the service we provided? Those are all targets that we do on an annual basis. Chair, that is the APP presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. I was wondering whether they can present on the GMT, and then we took questions all at the same time. Like there are two presentations. We've presented this one, so there's I think probably we should do that. Thank you very much.
I'll just start and then you can respond. Nasir has just stepped out. He's the chief. Oh, yeah, just in time management going down. I will ask Yasir to present and I will happily flight the presentation for him. Thank you, Yasir.
Thank you very much, HOD, Chair, and members. Thank you very much for this opportunity for us to introduce GMT. We are responding to your request specifically to introduce, to give an overview of GMT, what the trading entity is about, the organizational structure as it currently is, the mission, vision, and core functions of GMT, our key programs and projects, and then legislation impacting on GMT. So firstly, an overview of GMT. Firstly, GMT, or Government Motor Transport, is the old government garage, which has transformed into GMT, which is a trading entity now. So it is not a department on its own, it is a trading entity under the Western Cape Mobility Department. Its core mandate is to deliver reliable, accessible, innovative, and environmentally responsible mobility solutions for its client institutions. Now you'll see on the right-hand side, we've given a list of all of our clients, and you will notice it's not just provincial client departments, but also includes a number of national departments that have got a presence in the Western Cape. Included in that list, you will see the Office of the Chief Justice. That means that we provide vehicles for High Court judges, the Supreme Court of Appeals in Bloemfontein, as well as the Constitutional Court justices. Our strategic outcomes, as contained in the APP that you will have a copy of, are listed there. Firstly, for us to be leaders in mobility solutions, we don't just want to offer our clients cars and bakkies. We want to actually look at all of the solutions that form part of the vehicle. Vehicles are effectively becoming computers on wheels. And when we take solutions or services to the public, we want to offer our client departments the ability to do so in, for example, mobile offices that our Department of Social Development has requested of GMT, and we've just delivered 3 of 4 mobile offices that they can go and assist people with services in social development. So leaders in mobility solutions, greening the fleet, I think that speaks for itself. With a fleet of over 6,000 vehicles, we have a fairly large carbon footprint. And over the next couple of years, we want to reduce that substantially by going green. And I'll go into a bit more detail on how we intend going green with the fleet. And then satisfied stakeholders, both internal and external stakeholders, wanting to ensure that our clients will have a choice, whether they want to use GMT services or AVAs or budget. The quick answer to the question that you may have in your heads is that GMT services are cheaper, and we offer a much better package to clients. There were other provinces, in fact, when the function was devolved from the national department to the provinces, there were provinces that chose to go private sector route, and they soon realized that it was not the best decision, and they have now gone back to establishing provincial entities in each one of the provinces in South Africa. Different models. Ours is a trading entity. So we manage a fleet of some 6,300 vehicles in providing mobility solutions to the 31 clients that we've listed on the right-hand side. Our organizational structure is not really aligned to our strategy. So the HOD has formally requested organizational development in the Department of the Premier to review GMT's structure. We currently have on our establishment 192 posts, of which 132 are filled. And we're grateful that the Premier has now agreed that the remaining posts can be filled. While we are a trading entity and we don't get an allocation from the fiscus, GMT's funds are generated through tariffs that we charge our clients. Our headcount is still counted as part of the cost of employment budget for the province as a whole. So we did, HOD did request approval from the Premier, which we have now received to fill those posts. We do have a vacancy rate, but like I said, now that we've got permission to fill the posts, that will hopefully be addressed fairly soon. We had, at the end of the last financial year, we had one post additional to the establishment. Unfortunately, that person passed away in this past year. So that will change in the next report. That's just our structure. We've got 2 directorates and a sub-directorate responsible for management support services. Yeah, as I indicated, that we are now in the process of reviewing the structure. Our vision, mission, and values are contained in the APP. I've just taken this directly out of the APP. The vision for GMT as a trading entity is innovative mobility solutions to co-create a better life for all. Co-creation meaning that we will work with our client departments to understand what their needs are for them to serve the citizens, and then we provide them with the mobility solutions to be able to do their jobs more efficiently and effectively. Our mission to co-create, once again, with our clients and stakeholders, a better life for all citizens through collaboration and partnerships, driving culture change, growing thought leadership, and embracing design thinking to inspire storytelling. The values are aligned to the province's values of caring, competence, accountability, integrity, innovation, and responsiveness. When we developed GMT's strategy, we also looked at a number of themes against which we peg each one of our projects. So when we look at prioritizing projects, we look at whether the project will contribute towards one of these themes. So at the start of our 5-year strategic planning period, the themes that we identified as a GMT management team was thought leadership, design thinking, collaboration, storytelling, and service delivery. Service delivery being critical for us as a trading entity. When we did a mid-period review of the strategy, we also included localization. Understandably, this was during the COVID lockdown, and GMT made the decision to, as far as possible, use local products and services. Sustainability, of course, with regards to the fleet, that includes the under the outcome of greening the fleet. Jobs of the future, preparing our staff, firstly, for jobs of the future, with electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles being part of our current reality. Many of our staff members who have qualifications in as mechanics, for example, for internal combustion engine vehicles, would have to go through training to prepare them for jobs of the future. And a field like AI, artificial intelligence, as an example, we would want to ensure that we are, as GMT, ready for that future, and also preparing our clients with services that will include AI. And in technology, in introducing technology in the vehicles, an example being for traffic, for example, with in-vehicle technology that allows traffic officers to, with the cameras that we include in the vehicles or install in the vehicles, that those cameras are linked to systems that identify vehicles that are stolen, vehicles that have license that expired, that kind of technology that we can include in the vehicles for our clients. Just drilling down a bit more into each one of the directorates or units and its functions. Fleet Services is responsible for planning, acquiring, and converting fit for purpose vehicles. When we talk about converting vehicles, so an ambulance arrives as a panel van. And then what GMT does is that we have approved converters that are approved by the NRCS, the National Regulator for Compulsory Standards, to convert those panel vans into ambulances. And Ms. Mbombo will recall last year sometime we handed over a number of ambulances and other EMS vehicles to the Department of Health to towards just before the festive season. So fleet operations is responsible for that. Also, they're also responsible for a general vehicle rental service. That's similar to an Avis. We've got two models. Some departments, most departments have got a fleet of permanently allocated vehicles. And then we also have a growing pool of vehicles that can be accessed as and when required by clients. Obviously, it makes more economic sense for client departments to access the rental pool. For GMT, it's not as profitable. We work with our clients to try to also reduce their cost of transport. That's in the fleet operations. In the fleet repairs and maintenance, I think that speaks for itself. And then fleet risk management. GMT is self-insured. And that means that we don't have an insurance policy if a vehicle is involved in a crash, that we can call the insurance company and they will fix the vehicle for us. We self-insure, so if a vehicle is written off, GMT simply replaces that vehicle for the client. But it does mean we have to manage our risk. So we manage trends. We look at, for example, what's currently important, vehicles that are high risk for theft and for hijackings. And we try to advise our clients as best we can to steer away from vehicles that are very high risk. Also losses. We have to write off in terms of our accounting processes, vehicles that are written off. And we also manage and administer third parties' claims against GMT for crashes involving private citizens. Fleet finance, as the name implies, responsible for GMT's finances. GMT accounts in terms of GRAP. So again, as a trading entity, our accounting processes and our accounting standards are different. GRAP is generally recognized accounting practices. Did I say that right? Our director of finance next to me was the acting CFO. And of course, we have to ensure, firstly, that as a trading entity, we manage our finances in a way that the trading entity remains a going concern, and that is what the HOD as accounting officer for GMT has to sign off. So there are regulations pertaining specifically to trading entities, PFMA, National Treasury regulations that we have to abide by. So we've got management accounting and financial accounting and internal control that ensures that all information requested from the AGSA is readily available when the audit is underway. Then the sub-directorate that we have, Management Support Services, as the name implies again, is responsible for all management support services, office support, statutory reporting and stakeholder relations. That's responsible for drawing up these statutory reports, APP, annual reports, strategy, service delivery improvement plans, all the statutory reports they are responsible for preparing. Office support services, the people side, and then ICT management services. Ensuring that our systems are up and running. We have over 1 million transactions that have to go through GMT's books every year. That cannot be done manually. So Christian Krichler at the back and his team, very small team in IT, we do in-source ICT resources to ensure that our systems are geared to be able to manage the services that GMT must offer and account for our finances. Our key programs and projects, I'm going to touch on 3. Firstly, we'll look at the core business of GMT, which is the managing the vehicle cycle, vehicle replacement cycle. We'll look at new energy vehicle, NEV transition, how we plan on transitioning to new energy vehicles. And I'm using the term new energy vehicles and not electric vehicles very purposely. We do have an EV strategy, but we're now transitioning to a new energy vehicle strategy. And then the third key program is mobility solutions as a service to our clients. So starting with vehicle replacement, in the slides, we've given you an indication of the technology platform that we've developed to be able to better manage the vehicle life cycle through GMT, from fleet planning to the procurement of the vehicle. And for the procurement, we use the National Treasury Transversal Contracts, or RT57. You'll hear that term often when GMT reports. Assembly and delivery, we track it with the OEMs. The OEM is original equipment manufacturers. Vehicle preparation, that's on our side when the vehicles have to be licensed. We have the decals that are fitted, the number plates that have to be fitted, the vehicle operations that we track. The auditors expect us to know where all of our vehicles are at any given point in time. So we track all of our vehicles, and that telematics data is valuable for us. With a fleet of 6,000 vehicles, we have a wealth of data that is generated that we would want to be able to analyze to see what mobility needs are of our clients now and into the future. At the end of the vehicle life cycle, vehicles are withdrawn and the vehicles are sold on auction. They are online auctions, and anybody can register to purchase one of our vehicles at the end through the online auctions, and they are disposed through those auctions. Just on the NEV transition, we currently have most of our vehicles still internal combustion engine vehicles, diesel and petrol. The idea is that we want to get to plug-in electric vehicles as quickly as possible, or hydrogen vehicles also, because when we say that we want to go green, we really want to look at the entire value chain and whether the production of the electricity, for example, that charges the electric vehicles, whether that is also clean. But this is a transition period that we are in. There aren't that many electric vehicles currently available in the market, or rather electric vehicles that are fit for our purpose. There is, for example, the Nissan Leaf that's only coming into South Africa, I think, next year or late this year. So we're still with internal combustion engine vehicles. We have brought in a number of hybrid vehicles. You've seen the Toyota Cross, for example, a very good hybrid electric vehicle. And then from there, we'll move to plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. The Cross is not plug-in. And then battery electric vehicles as the ultimate goal. That's in line with our EV strategy that was approved by Cabinet in 2021. So our targets were set before we were informed by Toyota that they have Toyota Cross vehicles available. So those numbers, we've told the HOD, in fact, can be upped a bit, because she's also responsible for the Growth for Jobs initiative in as far as greening the fleet is concerned. So our target for 26-27 is 115 vehicles. I think we are already close to that number in the fleet. Antoni? And then mobility as a service platform. That is the technology that we have introduced in GMT. Importantly, with all of the development of technology in GMT, we own the IP, we own the code, and we do want to look at how we can share the technology either freely with other provinces and fleet entities, or through a service charge to recoup some of the capital investment that we've pumped into the development of our systems. So we have a core platform that manages our fleet, integrated traffic management, connected vehicle management for electric vehicles when it gets to that point. Command centers and remote resources. We're also looking at introducing drones as a service. Our client EMS, and this was under Ms. Mbombo's period as MEC, introduced drones in emergency medical services to help identify where people who were lost on the mountain, for example, in rescue services. Minister Mbombo knows more about that than I do. But we provided that service, but we're looking to expand that service, drones as a service, to other clients as well, like some of the national clients, sea rescue and agriculture. So GMT is looking at offering that service to clients so that we don't duplicate in our various departments, because there are licensing requirements that have to be met, which GMT can rather look at instead of every single department looking to use drones having to go through that process. And in supporting platforms also on our systems platform. The legislation impacting on GMT, there is of course one, which is ARTO, the Administrative Adjudication of Road Traffic Offences Act. It's been signed by the President, but we're still waiting for its promulgation. The implementation is being phased in through South Africa, I think in Gauteng. It's already underway. ARTO does make provision for reduced fines in the event that fines are paid within a set period. So from GMT side, we would want to ensure that when a fine is issued, we can get that fine to the driver of the vehicle as quickly as possible. And that we will do by having every driver in the Western Cape being issued with this kind of orange tag, which most of them already have, or all of them have now. The HOD took it to the provincial top management, and that was agreed at top management that every driver will have to have a tag if they want to use a GMT vehicle. We've also developed systems for quick redirecting of fines, where we've collaborated with the municipalities that have got systems where the fines which are generated through their systems, like the camera fines, are sent through to GMT on a daily or a weekly basis, and then the systems will direct it to the various departments, to the specific drivers that were driving those vehicles, as identified in our systems with the tracking and the tag systems. So that's just a quick introduction to GMT. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can switch it off. Thank you very much. Is there any other presentation?
We do have just a general overview of the department as well, if the committee would like us to take through. Just 1 second, thank you, Chair.
While the Chair, through you, while the HOD is setting up, I did mention that our services are cheaper than most of the private hire companies. On page 33 of the APP, you'll actually see a graph where we do a comparison every quarter to see how our service charges compare to the private sector.
Whilst the HOD is paging through, are we talking about this one now? The presentation, is it this one that says APP? Okay. Probably, whilst they are helping you to find it, maybe you can just use this one whilst they are and speak through to it whilst they are looking, they are helping you. Is it your laptop? Oh, okay, I get it now.
Thank you for your patience, Chair, committee members. I've just got to get it to move. Dis asof my dingetjie nie met my praat nie. There we go. It's going to take the same approach that we did with GMT. The overview of the department is we have a constitutional mandates in exclusive as a province in terms of traffic management. And then we share concurrent legislative mandates for public transport, vehicle licensing, and road traffic regulation. As indicated, we do also have a trading entity with its own strategic plan, own APP, and our strategic objectives that is in our existing strat plan that we are now working with the Minister to update is about integrated public transport, which includes in our world walking and cycling, systems that support innovation, optimized freight system, as well as safety on our roads supported by proper regulation. Our organizational structure, you will see we have 5 chief directorates, one in traffic management. We do transport operations through the Chief Director, Deirdre Ribbenaar. Mobility regulation is where the provincial regulator entity lies, as well as all our vehicle licensing and driver's license processes. You have met the GMT team, and then the department itself has a support team where we do policy research, strategy and finance with some operational management support. Our vision is to connect people, goods and institutions. We have a hashtag, creating connections. Our mission is to, through partnerships, enable economic potential, developing safe, dignified and fit for purpose transport system, allowing for opportunities for citizens. And then our functions are aligned to what we do as strategic objectives to provide integrated transport system, regulate transport, provide for road safety, support services through motor transport services, and ensure that through governance this is done in an accountable, transparent manner. You'll see that we focus on all modes of transport, with a key focus on partnerships, because as you saw, there's a lot of concurrent functions in this space. Our programs as they currently stand provides, as I've already indicated, so I might not need to go through that. I've explained administration, transport operations. This is where our public transport services are managed. We also provide safety for public transport services. A lot of our systems, so we have a system called Enforce supporting traffic management. We have a system for our operating license regulation, and those systems are managed in this program. And then in program 3, currently we report on both traffic management and transport regulation. Just for the committee's information, we have requested a budget structure change so that the structure and the organisation structure, the budget structure and the organisation structure looks more similar, and we are awaiting the outcome of that request. But for now, we report in this manner. Our budget for the 24-25 year is just over 3 billion rand. A large percentage of that is revenue. For that comes from a conditional grant for the public transport operating grant, which subsidizes the cab services. We get an equitable share allocation from the province, which is just under 950 million. And we also get a share of the tax revenue from the motor vehicle license fees, which is also just under 950 million. So those are the revenue sources for the department. And I just need to add, we also recently received a grant for EPWP from this year. So we started in July with road safety ambassadors through the EPWP program. In terms of our expenditure, the administration program has a budget in this year of 137 million. Transport operations, as I indicated, is our largest area of expenditure. It includes the transfer to Golden Arrow Bus Services, which is 1.23 billion every year. We also transfer money for the Go George services. We fund the direct operating cost, and the municipality funds the other costs, the indirect cost and the capital cost through a grant from National. So that's how the two come together. We have a large COE component in our budget, which nearly half of that is to our COE goes to the traffic management side. That's our largest staff component. So our COE budget is 589.8 million for this year. And I think those are the large items on our expenditure. What detail? There are also earmarked funding. So the George money is earmarked, the bus service money is earmarked, and we have also earmarked funding for the systems. I spoke about the Enforce system and the Provincial Transport Regulatory System. They fall under what we call the Integrated Transport Hub. That money is earmarked from the Treasury specifically for those two purposes. Okay, just in terms of what we're busy with, in Program 1, there is a policy and research unit, and they are responsible for the provincial land transport framework that we are hoping to bring to the minister at the end of the month, the first draft, and that can then go to cabinet for circulation for public comment. We also support the municipalities in drafting their integrated transport plans. Those plans are reviewed by us, and the MSC signs off that they are in compliance with the requirements for ITPs, which are regulated. I must just tell myself where I am. Program 2, as I indicated, the large two programs is the Golden Arrow Bus Services as well as the Go George services. We also support the minibus taxi industry through professionalisation and formalisation processes, provide for non-motorised transport support in municipalities. We are currently working at the School of the Blind to help them with their pavement outside of the school, and then we support building taxi facilities to make the use of those facilities more convenient, and other non-motorised transport provisions so that people can walk and cycle safely. We have our own provincial cycling bicycle program, and we work with the National Department on Shova Kalula, and this is to distribute bicycles in disadvantaged communities so that people are able to get to school and work easily. We provide training and maintenance of those cycles so people can be completely independent. We are working with the City of Cape Town and the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa on the ensuring that the full line through Cape Town, or all the lines, especially in the Metro Southeast, are up and running. We have received feedback that that is imminent. And then we also work through the working group with the city on the devolution of the Metro Rail services to the City of Cape Town. Further support for the city includes safety officers who work at the public transport interchanges. So we contribute financially towards payment of the staff cost and the vehicle cost to protect passengers and users the service. And we also contribute towards the dial ride service that is for passengers with special needs, so that they are able to be picked up directly from their homes, taken to work, and the province contributes towards that. I indicated that there's a public transport focus on safety as well, and we're currently focusing on driver fatigue issues. And we started in February a job seeker voucher program that allows participating companies to refer those who have submitted their CVs to use the Golden Arrow services in off-peak times, which has had a very positive impact on those who are able to use it. On the freight side, the province has got a freight strategy that was approved in 2019, and we are responsible for the implementation of that through the implementation program. That includes, apologies for the acronyms, a Western Cape Freight Demand Management platform, as well as a framework to support the freight rail and the road freight management in terms of self-regulating is another area that we're currently working on. We also supported a truck stop study so that we help those who are on the road for long hours. And currently we have set up a project management unit with the support of Transnet and the City of Cape Town so that we improve the port operations in and around the port. I've spoken about the systems, so included to the public transport regulatory system and enforce system. We also do the freight systems as I've indicated. Okay, so program 3, as I indicated, we've got 2 parts to it. One is traffic management. In traffic management, there are 3 areas of work. One is road safety, where we focus on education and awareness. We have the road safety ambassadors, and we work through the Safely Home brand as a communication campaign to support road safety and change behavior. Our traffic law enforcement component is a large component of just over 600 people. We are currently wanting to ensure that we have more coordination with local law enforcement so that we plan our interventions with them, especially when it gets to things like pedestrian safety. That normally happens, is a problem at the local level. And we also work with SAPs, with joint operations with them. And then, as I indicated, currently in the Traffic Training Centre at the Jean Lowe Centre, we have traffic trainees. We also train inspectorates of vehicles and inspectorates of driving licence testing centres. On the regulatory side, the taxi registrar, through the provincial legislation in this regard, registers local minibus taxi associations and their members, and they ensure compliance with the standard constitution and code of conduct. They play a vital role in addressing conflict in the sector. The provincial regulatory entity is also created by law. It is an independent body that reviews operating license applications based on motivations from the municipalities, and they do that process quite efficiently, as you will get to know them. There's also a public transport oversight function where broader matters in the province are addressed and reported back to the MSC. And then obviously all of that requires quite a lot of administration and support, and our colleagues in the Vangate Centre provides that, and they've got a satellite office in George to help with better service delivery for the industry. Transport Administration and Licensing looks at the registration and licensing of motor vehicles. This is done through agency agreement with municipalities. So 74 municipal registering authorities are providing that service. We also work through the driving license testing center. There are 59 of them across the province. And then vehicle roadworthy testing center is across the province, and we oversee 87 of those testing stations in terms of the National Road Traffic Act. And then there are also, I've just given an example, there are also permits provided from the regulatory team in this case for overload control vehicles. We have seen a big increase in this because of the renewable energy projects. So the wind farm, those big blades needs permits because they take up so much space. When there's things like film crews or cycling races, we will also issue permits for those matters to continue. On the legislative side, there's a lot of movement in this space. The National Land Transport Act was amended just before the election. As indicated by Yasir, the administrative adjudication of road traffic offences has been passed, but we are waiting for the implementation of that. And then within the National Road Traffic Act, there has been updates both on the Act and on the regulations. And we are also waiting for that to be initiated. And we will, Chair, the Minister has asked that we do a bit of an overview of the key pieces of legislation and what it means for mobility and what it means going forward, just to go into some of that detail, and we will do that. And then the Western Cape has got 3 pieces of legislation, one on the Road Transportation Act, which we call Law 8. This is the regulation of the minibus taxi industry associations. And there are additional legislation following on from the Road Traffic Act, namely the Western Cape Road Traffic Administration Act and regulations to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the department. You presented within an hour. So we still have got 2 hours. Over to the members to ask the questions. It's up to you. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, Member Brian, Member Masipa. I've got Constable, Member Heron, in that order, and Member Smith. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson. I think there's going to be a lot of questions from all of us. Firstly, thanks very much for the presentation, and thank you, Minister, for bringing your team along. My first question is just in terms, and I've seen the booklet that you've got here in terms of the ministerial priorities, and one of the first ones is ensuring that passenger rail is the backbone of urban public transport. Now, I know there is obviously a bit of a gap between the responsibilities and the powers that you would have within your Department of Mobility and what sits within perhaps infrastructure and nationally. So could you just expand a little bit more in terms of, mobility's role in this? Is it primarily in terms of the devolution process, or how do you envisage your department playing a greater role there? And I think probably following on from that is, discussions around passenger rail safety, which I think is a very important one for a lot of commuters. We have spoken, or you have spoken quite a lot in terms of safety when it comes to motorized transport. But passenger rail safety, what is the role of the department in terms of that? Is it mainly your safety officers at the PTIs, or is there perhaps a kind of collaborative approach going forward in terms of that? Then just the traffic fines that were processed that you mentioned. Are you able, or maybe, and if it's Mr. van der Merwe or somebody would be able to assist in terms of kind of a breakdown of whether those were primarily moving or non-moving violations? I know there does tend to be an argument that comes through quite strongly from the public that we don't do enough in terms of moving violations where we are policing that. Then just maybe this is a controversial one, but there was some chat a few years back around the government garages in Hope Street, and whether or not that is still something that's being considered, or if that's been shelved and those plans are no longer on the table. If it's going to be a government garage in perpetuity. The approved converters, how often is the tender for those converters renewed? Is there sort of a regular process in terms of the converters for those panel vehicles? I'm sorry, this is moving on to the government fleet. The new energy vehicles that you've mentioned, the hydrogen-powered vehicles, obviously that would be primarily for larger vehicles, I'm assuming. Unless there's a plan for the smaller hydrogen-powered vehicles. So which are the vehicles that are being considered for hydrogen power? We know obviously electric vehicles are in many instances prohibitively expensive, particularly for members of the public because of the import tariffs. Are there any discussions at the moment between your department and national in terms of trying to reduce those import tariffs? And obviously the rollout of charging infrastructure as well, which is a huge one. And then just finally, in terms of the drones, you've mentioned, compliance with regulations. I assume you're referring to the civil aviation regulations, which can make it quite tricky. What is the core proposed use for the drones? Is it mainly for sort of emergency operations and that sort of thing? And how would you go about navigating using them in residential areas, for instance, where that's largely prohibited? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the departments for the presentation. I think the drone, I had the drone clarity-seeking question. Honorable Brian kind of covered me. I think it's just a question really more about, your strategy and whether you will have really enough space in terms of flying the drone, especially in the city of Cape Town, because I think you probably are more congested than any other areas. So the next question, obviously, is to the minister with regards to the patrol regarding the foot and mouth disease. I've seen yourself and Minister Ivan Meyer, out at the borders. I just want to really just get a feel as to how is that operation going? Are we still in force? And would we continue? And how long are you planning to really carry out that operation? The other question you touched with regards to your pedestrian operation in your presentation, I just want to get a feel of the relationship between yourself and the city in terms of really ensuring that, Scholar Patrol is really effective and that we are really ensuring that they continue, we continue carrying them out, because I know that in some areas in township, we picked up that some have stopped and, there were quite some noises about, not having Scholar patrols. Regarding the targets, and obviously this question I did really pose when we had a meeting with the Speaker's office, your constitutional mandate, your target and that you have got here, have you designed them to meet the constitutional mandate, or are they target based on the funding that you have got? Are there areas that, require work, but they are not included in the targets? And if they are included, what is the kind of budget that you are looking for? And the following to that is really regarding the taxi operation. I know that you're funding your PATCO, why do I mention PATCO Golden Arrow and Go George. But taxi, obviously, they've been also making noise with regards to the support from the city. Just coming to GMT, is GMT a 3D public entity, or if you can really just help me with regards to that explanation? How many of them are there in the country, if they exist? Yeah, and you talked about the tariff paying charge, and I looked at them and I thought, phew, I could actually come and hire, a vehicle from the tariff paying charge. I could actually, come and hire from you because you're the cheapest. Is the service available to the public? Maybe just provide that clarity. And obviously, maybe if you can really elaborate a little bit with regards to how you determine your fees and your collection strategy and your payers, in terms of do they meet their regular obligations and so forth. And you also, in the annual performance, you talk about your new revenue stream. Can you maybe just, talk to us with regards to what is this new revenue stream that you're looking at? The one issue that I pick up here in the book is about, carbon emission, and with regards to really ensuring that you get rid of the old vehicles and so forth. Are we not getting some skorogoro back on the road from your area? If you can really just talk to that and maybe just explain to us, what is the cars that you bring into auction and the cars that you are really getting off, totally off the road, that we don't have them, being driven on the road. The last question, on page 77 in the annual performance report, there are grants, various grants that have not been spent. It's about 48 million. Maybe talk to us about why have they not been spent. Let me just, Chair, I'm almost done. Page 77, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, there's page 77. There were unspent grants and receipt. If you can really just talk to that. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I have a lot of questions, but I will rather give questions and maybe make some comments also. Chair, I think on the performance, and I just want to have some clarity questions. Number one is, who set the targets, your KPIs as well as your KPIs? Is it ourselves, or is it an independent or a service provider who do that? And that is it part of your performance agreements as directors? And how low does it go down to which level? Also, do we have something in place for lower rank people on the ground? Maybe we call it a PDP, a performance development plan. Is there something like that in place? And how do the criteria works with this regard? So this is on the performance. With regards to your transversal tender, is there problems in that tender? Is it going well? And if there's problems, how do you manage those problems? I know that within municipalities, there's a lot of those transversal tenders, and there's always a problem between municipalities and national government when it comes to the implementation of that, and municipality struggles to get out of their tenders. Is it the same here, or can you handle it? Then maybe some general comments, Chairperson. With regard to the review of your LITPs, I know for a fact that in the past, in 2010, this government also assisted municipalities. There was a lot of work put into that. your regional integrated transport plans as well as your local. But at that stage, money didn't follow those projects outlined in that plans. I hope for now, MEC and Chairperson, that when you review these plans, that also the grant funding or the money follows the plans so that municipalities can implement and that those plans will become a working document and not just a plan that this government try to put down on municipalities. Other one is with regards to your agency agreement. You need to have a real look into that agreement with regards to the structuring of your percentages going to municipalities. Some municipalities use this as a bigger revenue enhancement strategy, but it does not work. So when you review that, please let it not be to the detriment of municipalities, but they can use that money to do their own maintenance on their own infrastructure. So this is a general comment. With regards to what Member Masipa was saying with regards to your collaboration, MEC, and I think this for me is important coming from a rural area. Your collaboration as a department with education as well as infrastructure. Scholars that crosses national roads, provincial roads. I remember why I'm thinking now about your Graceland area in Beaufort West. Those scholars cross the N1 to get to school. How does this department then link up with the Department of Education as well as the Department of Infrastructure? Is there a plan, or can we talk about such a plan? Also, Minister, your scholars that goes from towns, let's say your Nelsport, Beaufort West, Maritzburg, Merwell, to Beaufort West to get to school. Those people, scholars are standing physically on the road, hiking to get to them. Is there a plan in place? Can we talk about that kind of plan? How do we assess those scholars going from their hometown to go to school and also backwards? This is practical things that I think this department can assist locals in that regard. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, MEC.
All the questions, and then you is still fine, or can you continue, Member Heron? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentations. Maybe before I get into some of the detail, just on that question around revenue sources, is the proposed provincial fuel levy still part of the additional revenue sources? And I see Ms. Moore is laughing, but she's been involved in this project for a very long time, and there's no mention of it. So perhaps you can just give us an indication as to whether that provincial fuel levy is still something that's being contemplated. If I just go to the APP and I look at page 21, this is of the department, not the GMT, which there's a paragraph about the external environmental analysis and around the political environment, and refers to national policy uncertainty, and that this affects devolution and the subsidization of public transport services and rail improvement. And in that context, I'm wondering what national policy uncertainty we're referring to and what the department is doing to implement the National Land Transport Act. And in particular, Section 40, which talks about integration of services, and we have Golden Arrow operating under a provincial authority, the My City operating in the City of Cape Town under a City of Cape Town authority. And so if we are to achieve integration, what work has been done to achieve that integration? And then just on the subsidized bus contracts, what is the status or the future of the Golden Arrow bus service contract? Is it still a month-to-month contract? Is it going to be put out to tender? Is this part of how we integrate our services? If I recall correctly, I can't find the section, but the National Land Transport Act, which is now 15 years old, required that something happens with those contracts within 2 or 3 years, and 15 years later, very little has happened. That was on page 21 of the APP. Just on the, I'm now on page 38 on the subsidized kilometers, which obviously are declining, and there was an explanation as to why there was an overachievement. When the number of kilometers subsides, as is indicated in the annual targets, what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean we're reducing frequency, we're cancelling routes? So are we leaving passengers stranded or forced to take alternative transport? So as we reduce the subsidization, does the route get cancelled? Does the frequency get cancelled? How does it affect the commuter? On page 40, there's and the HOD mentioned it, the support for the devolution of rail. And I guess this links to one of my first questions, which is about the province the provincial government is quite heavily active in the devolution space, beyond transport, or mobility as you call it now. But what about the devolution of the functions that are in the provincial mobility department that maybe should be in local government space? And are we working on that devolution? I'm nearly done, Chair. I think I just wanted to address the department and its relationship with the minibus taxi industry. And I raised this when the minister very kindly invited us to one-on-one meetings. And then I raised it before I actually read the APP booklet. But the booklet has got this atmosphere around almost that there's some hostility between the public transport operators, especially the minibus taxi operators, and the department. There's a lot of reference to transgressions and reckless driving, and the focus seems to be on the enforcement rather than on the development of a minibus taxi sector that, by your own analysis, is the largest provider of public transport to our commuters. So I wonder if this APP is going to change, where we are more engaged with the minibus taxi industry in particular, and how they can support public transport in a way that is less around, and of course we want safe public transport. And when you operate public transport, you take on responsibility for your passengers. So I'm not saying that public transport should not be safe, but in here there's a focus on the enforcement rather than is the structure of how we license them conducive to safe operating. I mean, I don't know if the system has changed, but the old system of supply and demand and how we meet demand, because a lot of the conflict in the minibus taxi industry is around supply and demand. The municipalities say there's too much supply on this route, so we're not giving licenses. So operators operate without licenses because they are meeting real demand that exists, even though the planning authorities are saying there's no demand. So I would like some understanding of the relationship that we intend to have with the minibus taxi industry. And then my final point on page 54 is around the improvement of public transport, walking and cycling. And there's something that is a key risk, which is something that I feel quite passionately about, as anyone who knows me, and that's the integration of transport and planning and land use management. And it's identified as a risk, and then the mitigation is we're going to establish a coordinating platform. Now, this is old thinking. I mean, this stuff is not new, that integration must take place. And is that really all we're going to do, is establish a planning and coordination platform? Or what is the department doing to drive this integration? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks HOD and MEC. But to be noticed that we are 6 daughters and 1 mama in this committee. I brought this under the attention of the Chair. I'm the one that must notice. No. No. Okay. Let me touch on some of the issues which could not be raised by my colleagues. The first one relates to the structural outlook of both GMT as well as your executive. Would you agree with me when I say, in respect to transformation, is like an Irish coffee with sparkling chocolate? That the outlook of your leadership, notwithstanding the fact that there are vacant positions, would you agree with me when I say the outlook represents an Irish coffee with sparkling chocolate? Now, that's the first question. What do I mean by an Irish coffee with sparkling chocolate? There appears, according to my observations, it's here in the structure, was issue of transformation, that you'd find a black person at the top, and at the core remains white and white male in a way. That's a concern. Can't we, as we seek to fill the vacancies, address the transformation question? This is not a department, an entity somewhere, but in the Western Cape. It should be reflective of the demographic. That's the first point which I felt I must deal with. To respond to what I describe as an Irish coffee with sparkling chocolates. The MSc might be one chocolate. No, that's the first thing. The second point, maybe I must come back to this one. Related to, in your report, you on operations and so on, you had a target of 930 for drunk and driving operations, and you exceeded your targets. I think, if I'm correct, 1,102. Now, it just ends there according to the report. One, including the public, is interested to understand about the concentration of those operations. That's the first point. The second point, embarking on operations, we ought to establish as to what then happened post those operations. Certainly, one would assume that there were arrests. If there were arrests, certainly, what was the outcome? What became the outcome of those arrests? Then one will be interested on the rate of conviction. The rate of convictions. The concentration of your operations as well as conviction rate on drunk and driving. And to what extent also were other law enforcement agencies were involved? You also talk about, I think, stop and search and seizure and so on. But success should not be defined by number of people stopped, but also what did you discover? What about weapons? What about drugs and many other things? If there were any other things, right? Were cases open? Certainly, yes. What is the state of those cases today? And such is important. Such details, I think, are important. GMT, here, Chairman, Chairperson, sorry, we're saying Chairman, Chairperson. I want to have a bread. We have BMWs up. What is BMWs? Very nice BMWs. Now, there were reports about 130 BMWs. She smiles. Which were stacked in a garage. Now, what is the state of those BMWs? And where are they? And where are they deployed? And who's driving them? Now, and I think also the use value of such, you know, if indeed they were unleashed to do work. In the report, there is a talk about, I think we must comment that there's another phase in George and so on, right, of Go George and so on. And I hope and trust that Chair will do an oversight visit. Yes, there is construction in George, in Timberlake in particular. I'm interested on how that road is going to be constructed. Whether it will indeed be the same road which will be dedicated for the Go George, or it will be the same as the Masidi Road to Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain, or it will be the road same as the Masidi bus route from Cape Town to Blowback. Because the challenge we continue to face in the provision of transport in particular is that service or infrastructure to working class communities is not the same as the infrastructure to the rich. One is deeply interested to understand the structural design of such. But where the issue I also wanted to raise is, okay, I hear that you talk about the Go George. What are other municipalities which have been earmarked for provision of buses? Beyond the city of Cape Town and George. I think it's you who raised this point about where there are areas or municipalities where people depend largely on hiking. For example, the N7. The N7. I mean the N7. Go to Citrus, go to Klein Willem. Largely people are depending on hiking. On the issue of, you talk about the taxi industry, I like how Brad captures this question. And not sure there's a preoccupation or obsession about the attitude in respect to the taxi industry. But there is a very important matter about formalization and improvement of minibus taxi services. But this is not explained, not detailed. But if you talk about that, what do you mean by that? There was once a program called Blue Dot. And they're not talk about it here. Now, why this discontinuity, if there is discontinuity? What are the fundamental basis for that? Again, I was talking about this question because here the purpose is about building an affordable, integrated, safe, and reliable public transport system. Last year, there was a strike. It's an issue. I know, Chair, that there is a pending meeting next week, but it's here in the report, and one is interested about, I'm not sure whether they will respond here or when we meet next week, about the state of minibus taxi testing, right? And also, what advances have they made since they were constituted in seeking to address the challenges which was facing or continues to face the industry in this instance, which talk to the issue of the impounding of taxes, you know, and the allegations that we put into on you that even now the city of Cape Town was busy with blades and issuing finding minibus taxis in Nyanga in particular, and that this appears to be targeting the industry. Is that correct? Now, the last point, the rail is under construction, under rebuilding, and indeed trains are moving. Trains are moving. And to what extent is the provincial government supportive of this rebuilding phase and ensure that indeed trains are functioning properly? But I am concerned, and one is deeply interested on the fundamental basis for the devolution of powers in the rail. Whose interest will this serve? Why is there a problem when the rail is under the national government and importantly, PRASA is an entity, and the city as well as the provincial government play a supporting role than a beauty contest of control? As Brett has made this point that is there a discussion about devolution of powers in certain responsibilities to the local state in the context of municipalities? If it were to take place, will it take place across, including in Oton, in Pito, in Naisna? Now, I think such is important because ours is to serve the people than in a beauty contest of control at the detriment of our people. So the few issues which I wanted to raise. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before I say something from my side, is there anything from you, Member Johnson? So
I'm covered, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. So I'll just have a short input, and then probably we can just take a 10 minutes, just stretch break before the department respond. So for me, as I indicated in other committees that I've been part of, it's about, we are in the second quarter now in this budget year, meaning this report, which has got a preamble of the previous minister. It will be unfair for me to ask lots of questions because it's still a continuation of what I was part of. So there's nothing new with this one. But having said that, in the third quarter after the third quarter, we will have an MTEC, the MTEC, where budgets will be reviewed, and then you could be able to move monies. So my interest, so I'm preempting what I'll be interested in. When I look at the ministerial priorities, for me, it's about how do you put SMART, which is SMART, which is how you'll be able to be specific about these priorities, and the issue of how we're going to be able to measure them, the issue related how we make sure that are achievable, especially if you want to spread them in the same budget here until 31st of March 2025, or we'll be able to do it in a year period. And then the issue related to the relevancy, and then the time bound. For me, that's what I'll be looking at. Similar for me, my interest, which is, it's not my committee, it's the committee of all of us. My interest also when I do the oversight, it will be specific, because if you will say I will choose Beaufort West, where I want ABC, for me it will be about how do we go there and find what you are saying there. Just to make an example, part of your priorities, you mentioned in coordination to improve port efficiency. So I'll be interested, although like George Airport, it's not necessarily your mandate, but how do you be able, because it's part of the port. Like you make an example again related to Go George, because I see transport as an enabler, but at what extent that now you expand to the Uniondale side. And then lastly, again, because Member Constable has mentioned about the Beaufort West, the integration of what you do and its impact, and working with in partnership with the municipalities, because some of the contributing causes of major expenditures by the other departments, specifically health, in these remote areas, is because there's no public transport. So therefore, you have to pay as much for the ambulances and for everything, because the Tanisaras they've got from Maritzburg to the Beaufort Hospital, or from Nelsport to whatever, or to Merivale, the issue is about the transportation. So for me, I'm preempting that this is what I'll be focusing on for me from my side. But it will be not okay for me to be interrogating you on the APP that I was part of. And also you are not in the preamble as an executive in this one. So thank you very much. We can take a 10 minutes break. Which watch are we using? It's 1:45 here. Can we come back at 5:02 and then the department response? Thank you very much. Do you have any tea or something? Yes. Okay, there is a free tea. It's free. Okay, thanks.
devolved to the lower state who is competent enough so that there is better service delivery for a commuter in that regard. And also in terms of let's talk about the taxi industry. I think, Chair, this is a very important discussion that one would have to have, but just the issue of perceptions and the relationship between the department and the industry itself. Within my 2 months, I have met with the chairperson of Santaco, Mr. Hermanas, personally, informally, and I have been invited on the 1st of August for breakfast, where I spoke to them, about the perceptions that are there about the industry and what is it that we need to fix. And I gave them my commitment as the Minister of Mobility that I would work with them and they need to work with me. And because they play a critical role in terms of mobility, making sure people are going to work, to school, and that we cannot wish that away. But of course there are concerns that we need to deal with, and we need to have honest conversations. And the HOD will elaborate in terms of what is it that we have been doing as a department in trying to support the industry. And also when you talk about formalizing, and that's the question that I posed to them. And I said, one will have to come to a stage when you talk about formalizing that the sector itself understand what is said by formalizing. So where do they see themselves? Where do they see themselves in the next 5 years, 10 years? So that we don't impose solutions, but they come to us and say, this is how we want to self-correct, and this is how you can assist us. And I think those are kind of discussions that we need to have and need to be honest. But in terms of the relationship with the department and them, there's no hostility in that regard. I speak to the chair, I WhatsApp him and I call him, and the reception when I was there, it was very great. So I appreciate that one. And also in terms of the collaboration between the different departments. I was in Hesekwa in this week, Chair, and I said to the mayor there, unfortunately, we'll have to have some of the uncomfortable discussions in terms of planning, in terms of human settlements, because if one looks at the stats and the information that we have currently, that people will spend 40% of their salaries just to get to work. Those are the realities. Those are the information that we have. And maybe it's time that we speak to our local municipalities in terms of how they develop their human settlements in the future, to make sure that they also contribute to making in the cost that the individual have to pay to just get to work. And those are the kind of discussion that we have, because it does not just end there. Just a typical example gives you in Kharabo. In terms of road fatalities, look, there is an informal area next to the N2, which is here in Nyanzela. Those are the kind of contributors to fatalities. So when we need to speak to those municipalities and say, how can we mitigate? Make sure that people don't, our fatalities come actually down, which is one of my priorities. So engagements and collaborations with different spheres of government is critical in this department, and there is nothing that we can achieve without having those collaborations. In terms of the FMMD, food and mouth disease, member Noko, that initiative came from Minister Ivan Meyer. And I supported it because traffic officers is part of mobility, and we also collaborated with him. And that was the same question that I had with him: for how long are we going to have it? And the simple answer that I can give to you is that as long as we can, to make sure that it does not come to the province, because we need to protect. If it means it's going to take for us longer to have these roadblocks and these collaborations, we are going to do it. But what is important is that we just make sure that it does not come to the province, and we do everything. And if we have to have multiple roadblocks going forward for months, make sure that we're safe, we'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to take the questions in order and I will ask my colleagues to support. The Minister has spoken about, Honourable Member Brian, about the passenger rail devolution issue. The process currently is with the City of Cape Town has undertaken a due diligence study, a pre-feasibility study that showed a positive impact for the city with a large investment, but it is a positive impact. And they're currently busy with a governance study, and that will be available in October. And the essence of the study is whether the function remains with PRASA, devolves to the province or devolves to the city, and then it looks at different criteria in terms of what would the impact be, what would the risks be for those three governance options. So we are part of that working committee and will be bringing that information back to the Minister and Cabinet in October. I will ask Willie and his team to provide details on the moving versus non-moving violations so that we can provide you with the statistics. We don't have it at hand. It is definitely a matter that we don't want to turn road safety into a money-making scheme. It is about making sure people are safe. So it is an important question and we will make the information available. Oh, I just want to go back. You spoke about the safety matter on the rail in the rail space, and it is critical to bring people back to rail as well. Members might know that in the late 80s, the railway police was taken out of the transport sector into the South African Police Service. They are part of our Transport Priority Committee, so the railway police are there. I must say they spend a lot of their energy on freight rail, which for me is a bit worrying because I think freight rail should pay for their own security. But I think it is an interesting question that also needs to be posed to the city. If you are looking at this function, are you looking at the safety function as well? And can those resources be used better? And I think another issue that we need to keep alive is the role of communities in safety. The city is ahead of the pack in terms of these community improvement districts, which is community-funded programs, and they are perfect vehicles to support the station beautification, station safety, because it's their space. So I think there are definitely things that can be done. In addition to trying to manage the closing of the lines. I'm going to hand over because the next couple of questions was on GMT. Yasir, starting on the Hope Street matter, and then if you can just respond to those questions.
Thank you, HOD. Chair, through you. Just to the members, GMT is located in Maitland. We moved to Maitland some 3 years ago in Risper Street in Maitland. So we moved our operations that were split between Hope Street and Roland Street, and then also further up in Hope Street is Buitenkant Street. We moved all of our operations to Maitland. So I think the question on the use of Hope Street should best be posed to the Department of Infrastructure, Immovable Asset Management, specifically on what their plans are for those facilities. With regards to the approved converters, directly answering your question, how often are the tenders renewed? They're renewed every 3 years. But I must add that we participate in the national contract. The RT57 includes converters. But there's a caveat to that, because it cannot just be anyone that decides, I'm now going to start converting vehicles. Those converters have got to go through a process with the NRCS, the National Regulator for Compulsory Standards, and it's for every vehicle model that they have to get permission. Not to belabor the point, but just to give you an example, there was an issue, for example, with the conversion of Toyota Quantums a couple of years back, where Quantum panel vans were being converted for use as minibus taxis. And that was not approved by the NRCS, nor was it approved by Toyota Japan. So the OEM, in this case Toyota, has to give permission via the NRCS to converters to convert vehicles that belong to them. Otherwise, they will not take responsibility for any design flaws. On the question of hydrogen vehicles being more appropriate for bigger vehicles, I think that is rapidly changing. I think for us as GMT, trying to stay abreast of developments in the automobile industry is actually becoming quite difficult because things are changing so rapidly. There are a few OEMs that are looking to bring in hydrogen vehicles in the next 3 years, BMW being one, VW is also looking at that, and Toyota. And there are also other conversions and other engine types that are being looked at by the various OEMs. So whereas you are right that hydrogen was initially looked at for bigger vehicles, and also gas conversions were looked at for bigger vehicles, there are trucks that are using compressed gas conversions, and we're also tracking that. So smaller vehicles like BMW, Toyota, and a few others are looking at hydrogen as well. And hydrogen is included in that basket of new energy vehicles that we are monitoring the market on. You are right that electric vehicles currently are prohibitively expensive. And specifically, the OEMs are looking at the higher end market. So you have your BMWs, Mercedes, they've got the plug-in battery electric vehicles, but there are a few of the OEMs like Nissan that is looking to import the Nissan Leaf, which would be more appropriate for our fleet. Also, on your question of charging infrastructure, and I'm glad that you asked the question because our EV strategy, in fact, does speak to that point, that we were not just looking at the vehicles and bringing electric vehicles into the fleet. We looked at the entire ecosystem. So introducing electric vehicles in a manner that stayed in sync with the private sector introducing charging stations all over the country so that the vehicles could also be charged, and also in collaboration with our Department of Infrastructure, looking to install charging stations at our government facilities as well. And not just charging infrastructure with the charging station and batteries, but also solar PVs, so that we have clean energy charging our electric vehicles. That was the starting point that the HOD had agreed to when we drew up the EV strategy. On the drones, you're absolutely right. The compliance with civil aviation, there are a few requirements, and it's quite rigorous for not just the pilot to be registered and to have certain flight hours, but the institution that is going to appoint the pilots must also be registered. And it's for that reason that GMT said, let us then rather look at GMT being going through the regulation and being registered as the operator of the drones, and then our client institutions can then piggyback on that registration. They could then have either their own pilots, or GMT would provide the drones with the pilots. And then on the use of drones, there are some of our client departments that have already started to explore the use of drones very effectively. One of them being agriculture, where they're using the drones to do surveys of plowed fields, etc., and also to monitor the movement of cattle and livestock. Excuse me. And then another use, of course, as I mentioned earlier on, was with EMS, where they're using drones for search and rescue operations. Now, those are fairly easy to understand, and I can understand that those departments explored that. But there are other uses by departments that have either just started to explore that or have not yet thought of exploring the use of drones. Example being our roads department could very well use drones to do inspections of bridges underneath the bridge. So where a bridge inspection currently could take a couple of weeks because you have to have people hanging down from the sides, where departments have got silos, grain silos in the agricultural space, and you want to inspect inside, and you want to minimize operational breaks, drones are excellent in cutting down on that, on the time required. And then also something that we as a department would want to explore is with traffic scenes. You know, when there's a fatal crash, the road has to be closed and police have to be brought in. The first responders would be there. They would have to wait for the police so that the entire area can be captured, marked, etc., especially if there's a fatality involved. There are international examples where drones are used to create a 3D scene through which the enforcement authorities can then walk, in inverted commas, to look at the scene so that the road can be cleared as quickly as possible. Those are just a couple of examples that we want to explore as a further mobility solution to our clients. And that also then responds to the question on what our other revenue streams are that we are looking at. This would be a new revenue stream for GMT. We would look at what our pricing model would be for that. And when I say pricing model, GMT does not seek to make a profit. It's really about covering our costs. And that speaks to the issue of the type of entity that we are. And I'll ask the acting CFO to perhaps touch on that point, the type of entity that GMT is.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Chair, through you, GMT is a 3D trading entity. The second part of that question was on how many entities are in the country. So the other provinces, there's 5 in total. So the other provinces that also run trading entities are Gauteng, it's Free State, Northern Cape, and the Eastern Cape. Thank you.
Actually, shall I continue?
You may. Okay.
Thank you very much. On the question of, I think, remember, Masipa, you asked the question of whether the public can make use of GMT services. The answer is no. Unfortunately not. GMT is directed by its mandate approved by National Treasury as a trading entity. So we do not offer our services to the public, nor do we offer our services to, for instance, senior managers who have a vehicle allowance structured as part of their package. How fees are determined, I'll leave that to the money person.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Chair, through you. The question about how the fees are determined of GMT. So basically there's 2 main revenue streams. It's kilometer tariffs and daily tariffs. So the daily tariffs are determined by using the capital cost of the vehicle and also the fixed overhead costs of the entity. So what we would typically do is take the cost price of the vehicle, including its conversion and extras fitted to the vehicle, and dividing that amount through the useful life of the vehicle, typically for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it might be. So basically we take that total cost divided by the total number of days in that useful life, and that would give you basically one component of the daily tariff. Then on the fixed cost component of GMT, we take a snapshot at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year on the fleet size, and basically isolate all the fixed cost components in the income statement, and basically divide that by the average number of vehicles. So that would encapsulate the daily tariff. The kilometer tariff consists of 2 components. It consists of the repairs and maintenance component, and it also consists of a fuel component. Basically what we do to determine those 2 is the fuel component. We look at industry norms for certain types of vehicles through Provincial Treasury. I can refer the member to APP number page 34, which basically indicates that from the 1st of April 2016, on average, the entity has been adjusting tariffs below the MTEF percentages consistently. There were even 2 years that we didn't adjust the tariffs, and that were typically the COVID years, and trying to transfer some of the financial benefits to the client institutions. Chair, there was a question on the collection days and basically the approaches that we follow for collections. We do not struggle with collections. The latest indications are that our debtors pay within 16 days. And that's the average, and it's well below the 30 days as legislated. How do we do it? Basically, our systems and our human resource processes support one another. So typically one would argue that the clients wouldn't pay if they're unhappy about the bills, that the bills are inaccurate or don't reflect the true reflection of the usage. So basically, we've also got a dedicated debt management component, and basically those debt management staff are allocated to certain clients, and they've got a very close working relationship and basically to iron out any issues that might be on the bills prior to the payment periods. These tariffs are determined in terms of National Treasury Regulation number 19, and basically it is adjusted on an annual basis, as I've mentioned. Chair, there was also a question on page 77 on the APP, and that pertains to grants. So how do these grants arise? So there could be a number of reasons for this. So typically in this case, client institutions would transfer funds to GMT. There's an agreement that GMT and the client institution signs, which basically specifies the type of vehicle and the amount that needs to be transferred. So when we're looking at a total amount of unspent at the end of December 2023, the 48 million, this is a timing and reflection. So basically a snapshot in a point of time. So, for example, the Department of Health and Wellness had 14.3 million at that specific stage. Also keeping in mind that it takes typically 4 months to procure a vehicle, and if there's a conversion element, it could extend past that. So basically in this case, the clients would have typically paid amounts up to the end of December, and that vehicle's procurement or conversion hasn't been done yet by the end of December. And as soon as that vehicle is actually allocated to the department, then we would de-recognize this liability and recognize the revenue on the chart of accounts of GMT. So typically that's how it happens. So basically it could arise from the expansion of footprints. Clients could obtain funding for certain projects, etc. So there's various reasons for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rian. So in the normal course, this is not the unspent grant money that must be paid back to Treasury. It's an accrual accounting matter. Thank you, Rian and Yasir. Honourable Mapisa, there were, I think the Minister responded to the foot and mouth. There is a standard operating procedure in place for the traffic officials to contact the veterinary services in that area in place. There are processes to request the Scholar Patrol, and if they can be done, we cannot close a national road, but we will then take those requests on. And what we will do for you is just give you an overview of exactly where all of those Scholar Patrols are currently operational. You ask quite a difficult question on how do we decide on our targets. So the targets are set by the department with the capacity and the budget taken into account, and the direction of where we want to go is set by the executive authority through the strategic planning process. When I went through the budget, I highlighted that we have three broad sources of money. We've got the provincial equitable share money, motor vehicle license money, and then the conditional grant money. Public transport is highly dependent on conditional grant money. all the services run in the country, whether they are conventional bus services like cabs or the BRT services in the cities, are all funded through conditional grant money. What the province has been able to do is use our motor vehicle license fees, which in general goes towards road maintenance, also for public transport, because it makes sense. If you will reduce congestion with more public transport. So we are able to fund the Go George services and fund what we call our Provincial Sustainable Transport Program, which includes support for the minibus taxi industry through those funds. And then normally the equitable share money is paying for the goods and services and the staff component. So that is our limitation, and the National Department did publish a public transport subsidy policy for comment at the end of last, maybe even beginning this year. So we are looking at where they're going in that space in terms of ensuring that I think that subsidy policy makes it clear that there's insufficient money, number one, for public transport in the sector. And then asks questions about how do you allocate that and through what mechanisms do you allocate that. So we are watching that space and seeing what it allows us to do. In the meantime, we are, as I say, using our motor vehicle license revenue to continue to support public transport for all the modes, buses as well as minibus taxis. Then it feels like there was something else I wanted to say. No, I think I've said that. And then the GMT questions have been answered. And there was a skoro question. The GMT sells their vehicles after 5 years. So there are no skoros. It's just really, really cool prices to get a second-hand car that has been looked over well. So we don't send skoros. No. Yeah, okay. Member Constable, the questions around the performance targets. It feels like I must also say for this, maybe we must give you more information. We don't achieve all our targets every year by accident. So it is an accountability system where our performance agreements with managers are at the strategic level, but when they report on what they did well in terms of their area of support, they have to reflect on the targets that we've set for ourselves. Whether we really get it right all the way to our level 5s, I think can always be improved. But it definitely must be a team effort. We have to succeed, make sure that focus feeds all the way through to all the staff members to make sure that we meet the targets. And we are improving through, I think what's really interesting is how that technology, as I said earlier, has improved the traffic management area. Because now you can see what somebody did on the road because everything is now recorded. So I think it's really worked very well for us. And I don't want to push them, but I am pushing traffic management to say, can we up the target now that we got all this cool technology? But they remind me that it's also about quality. It's not just about getting cars through. So there was a question about GMT, if there are problems with the transversal contracts. My sense is not, but if you want to just reflect on that.
Thank you, HOD. There have been problems with some of the national transversal contracts. Thankfully, those are the ones that we actually steered clear of. That's the RT46, the repairs and maintenance. From time to time, there are delays in the renewal or the extension of contracts, but we do manage that well enough for us not to be affected too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasir. We also, as a department, make use of some of the provincial transversal contracts. The safety contract and the communication contract is two that comes to mind at this stage, and we are actually quite happy in terms of the NLTA to support municipalities. So we do have a dual function in terms of supporting municipalities, and we do find ways to fund some of the projects, but it is really limited. We also run that through the Provincial Sustainable Transport Program, where we would help with the NMT project, or we would help with the taxi rank, as I indicated in the presentation. It is limited. And it is limited. The agency agreement with the municipalities, that it is a really big expense in the department. It's nearly R500 million that we pay municipalities to perform the motor vehicle licensing and other regulatory functions on our behalf. That currently runs through a circular, and as you rightly say, some municipalities make money out of this and others make losses. The intention is to fund the costs so that they are a properly funded function. And what we have done is on our risk register added this matter, because what we want is a service level agreement with every municipality to ensure that understanding their costs on the one hand, but also being fair, that we don't pay some people something and other people. If we can find that balance between ensuring that we cover the cost and that we do that fairly. And we actually met with the SALGA committee this week, committing to come back to them in November on the progress and on giving municipalities some form of costing methodology to say, use this template so that you properly cost those services, so that we can talk to each other. On the collaboration area, obviously it is key for us to engage with education. They do run the scholar transport. They also fund the scholar transport service. But as part of our focus on scholar transport, we have committed to do a review on whether we are getting the best value for the scholar transport approach. And we also have been engaging with the education department on how to improve the regulation of scholar transport so that the principal signs off on the operating license and that we facilitate that process to make it easier. And obviously, we also need to collaborate with the Department of Infrastructure, and we have set up bi-monthly meetings with the HOD, because there's quite a variety of matters that now runs across the two departments that we must keep our fingers on that pulse. Heron, the fuel levy is actually still active. There is a task team in the Department of Infrastructure who is still reviewing the possibility of a provincial fuel levy, obviously as an additional revenue source to ensure that that we can do more than, I think we can only do 30% of maintenance with the current funding available. So there is an ongoing process with the Department of Infrastructure. I've not been involved with it, but I can get some feedback on that process, because of course I think it must be spent on both roads and public transport. So we will get some feedback on that process. In terms of the national policy uncertainty, I mean, with rail, the rail policy has actually committed to devolving the function to local government. It is just a delay in getting there that has now taken some time, and as I've given some feedback in terms of where we are with that process, and hopefully by October we'll be able to know who takes on this function, because that's what the analysis is about. With regards to the bus issue, the Amendment Act changes the roles of province a little bit as it relates to municipalities who've not started ITPs, integrated transport plans, but doesn't do too much on those where it started. So the gaps issue is very much alive. We have briefed the minister. He's asked for a briefing with the premier. There's been some informal discussions between ourselves and the city. There's been some legal opinions between ourselves and the city, so that we We ensure that what is required in law takes place in a manner that the full 230,000 people that gets onto that bus every morning continues to be able to do that. For me, that is what I set out when I spoke to the EDS. This is my goal, is we don't want to lose capacity in terms of public transport. And that means something in terms of the conventional bus services versus the BRT services. And it means something in terms of, oh, let me someone go there because that was your next question. We run an interim contract with cabs. Because we budget on a yearly basis, the legal opinion has been that we must give them notice, and that we must give them notice that in a year the contract will end. That is in terms of Section 46, the NLTA. So that interim contract makes provision for cabs to provide both subsidised kilometres and unsubsidised kilometres. We commit to only pay cabs what the grant pays us. So what happens is you'll see we have 9 million kilometres, 9 million kilometres, 7 million, 5 million. And that fall is when cabs starts running their unsubsidised kilometres. They provide about 38 million passenger kilometres, and 8 million of that is unsubsidised. They would like it subsidised. I think in terms of the discussion with the city, I have had discussions with national government to say there is 270 million unsubsidised kilometres being provided in a very efficient way in the city of Cape Town. Can you not fund that? Because if that funding is closed, then it's much easier to have these negotiations and discussions about who takes responsibility for the function. So we are kind of in the middle of it. And I think we just need to commit to come back to you in terms of where we're at. I think the minister has spoken to the MBTT. If what the APP is showing is an over focus on enforcement, it is because I spoke earlier about a lot of the traffic management indicators are national. So we have our own indicators of the important things for us, and then the national says you got to report on these 20 things. So the APP starts looking extremely focused on enforcement. But in terms of our department and the resources we are allocating towards a relationship with the minibus taxi, both in Deirdre's unit, in Kurt's unit, working with Godfrey, it's quite extensive. And we do, as I said, through that sustainable transport program, put a lot of resources into those engagements, supporting the Santaku leadership legally, financially, in terms of financial management, in terms of business advice, in terms of coaching. And we have more plans on the table, but we just don't have the money for that yet, where we want to look at training and we want to look at tracking of vehicles. So there is a complete commitment to support the industry. You very rightly indicated that a lot of the tension arises out of the demand and supply basis and where those things go wrong. It is very much part of our ITP review. We just did a review for Winelands, where you pick up that, especially at the intermunicipal level, that demand and supply work is not done properly. And so we reflect on that, and we are able to support some of that work. And that, I think, can also help with this matter. At this stage, just to close that issue, we cannot, our legal understanding is that we cannot put the cab services out to tender. And that function is with the City of Cape Town. So it's also interesting to think about, if we talk empowerment, to do it, you actually just have to put that stuff out so that people can tender for it. And we do have a more on the safety side of cycling and walking, a non-motorized safety strategy that we're bringing to Cabinet to see how we can change behavioural change in terms of ensuring safety. But we will have to work with local government to make walking and cycling acceptable and a good choice, because that's where it happens. People, I keep saying you don't walk to Beaufort West, but you walk in the city, you walk in the municipality, and that's where that's why we have to do those collaborative things. And maybe we can come back with a bit more meat on what that collaborative processes have offered us. So we are extremely committed. I think I have answered all those questions. Okay. Honourable Member Mkhisu, am I saying? Hi? Well, Minister said I can say Benson. Thank you. He says it's the cream that can't say the words right. We have an EE committee in our department. Every appointment gets checked, whether we made sure that we did our best to get the right people, so that we reflect the members, the people of the province. We are underrepresented in black males. We are underrepresented in black females. And we are committed to fix that. We will send you the drunken driving detail operations. You wanted to know where they are. And Willie's team will provide you with those details so we can show you exactly where they happen. Obviously, we'll show you after they happen, not before. But we also, although we're not, the judicial system is not our responsibility, but we do work with SAPS through the Prof Joints structure in the province. And what we can do is we can ask for information to come back to us on conviction rates relating to our work. I think that would be a nice way to close that loop, and we can then feed that information back to the committee. That was that. And then the BMWs are all out there and happening and driving. They are no more parked vehicles. It was a delay in the supply of the vehicles. There was some Japanese factory that closed down, and then there was supply chain issues after COVID to get all the radios in. And once we got the radios in, we could kit the whole thing out and link it to the control center and get them out on the road. So it was a couple of things that ended up delaying us using them, but they are using them. We did do an analysis of, is this value for money in terms of spending money on high-end vehicles, and we found that it is worthwhile for GMT to provide those vehicles to the department. The capital investment on Thembalethu, Deirdre, I don't know if you want to just reflect on the changes in allocation to the municipality and what they will be able to do with that question around the infrastructure in Thembalethu, if you want to.
Thanks, actually, Chairperson, through you. I got the question a little differently in terms of the structural integrity. Is the construction in Thembalethu going to be the same as it is in the CBD? Okay, so absolutely I can confirm that.
Can I just indicate that in your response, we're only left with 5 minutes?
Yes, Chair. And I was almost done. Absolutely, I can confirm that the structure in terms of the bus routes is exactly the same. The method of construction, all of that, whether it be in the suburbs, whether it be in the CBD. So yeah, I think that is, we are happy to report that we did receive an additional R500 million from National in December for roads constructions, and that's as part of the incentive portion because the city was doing so good from an operational perspective, member. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deirdre. We want to go to other municipalities, but we need to find the plan, whether that is a long-distance bus plan that's currently provided by Provincial, whether it is a long-distance rail plan that is currently not provided. We are taking that on. Actually, as I indicated to Member Heron, is when the National Land Transport Amendment Act was passed, it actually makes it clear that province is responsible for inter-provincial transport. So we have to take that mandate, find the money for it, and make it happen. And we are looking at all options to make that the most cost-effective way to get people to be able to move in the province. And we note the N7. So I've spoken a little bit about what we focus on in terms of the professionalisation and the support for the minibus taxi industry. And I know we're coming back next week, so I think we can go into some of that details there. I did speak about the plans that we have for more training, for using that technology that Deirdre and them used in Blue Dot, to continue using that. And we will be coming to the MTech chairperson with that plan. The rail question on whose interest do they serve, largely the issue here is that it allows for integrated transport planning. So at the level of which public transport is provided, that all the modes can be provided in an integrated manner. But also it allows for accountability at the most lowest level of government. So where people get the services, that's where government is accountable. Why would we think about the city? As I said, it allows for that integration between all modes. It allows for accountability. But what the city also brings is it brings an ability to finance investment in public transport through land investment, which is something the province doesn't have and national doesn't have. So what you find in other cities is it is not only being able to get the tickets for transport, which is valuable to provide the transport. It is having access to that land and being able to develop the land, which really brings in profits or really brings in money, which can then be pumped back into the public transport sector. So that is a big value that local government brings in terms of financing, which is not available to the other sectors. I've spoken about long distance rail and bus and that we will look at it. Chairperson, we will bring you smart indicators. We will, as I said, focus on this regional transport approach and what we will be doing there. We hear that other departments are dependent on us getting that right. So thank you for that reminder. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Is there anything that you feel like the department needs to cover based on the questions? To be continued. To be continued. We're left with 1 minute. What I'm saying, to be continued. You want it to be part of the resolutions, or you want them to answer it now? We're left with 1 minute. Okay, we'll put it as part of the resolutions. Okay, ourselves. Is there anything from your side, Minister?
No, Chair. From our side, it's just to say thank you very much for the invite. And in closing, Chair, we like I said to the member of the committee that there is no one who's got a monopoly of solutions. And the success of this ministry is highly dependent on the cooperation and support from the members of mobility. If there is any idea of solutions in terms of how we can change the landscape when it comes to mobility, please feel free to get in touch with all the senior managers within mobility, because together we are able to change, the lives of the commuters. It can never be only about the ministry and you just play your oversight. Mobility must be about all of us, and we're gonna come with solutions together. we are going to be here. You are going to be critical in terms of your questions, but we are going to be honest. All our engagements are going to be honest. And then if we cannot answer you, we're not going to answer you, but we are not going to lie to the committee. And I don't expect my officials also to lie to you. We are going to start this honestly, and we're going to finish this honestly. With those few words, thank you very much, Chair, and I wish you all the best.
Very much, all the best. We do actually acknowledge that this is a one-year-old department, and therefore there might be some of the teething problems in regard to trying to separate yourself from the previous joint department. So we'll journey with you. But thank you very much. You want to say something?
I know I shouldn't be speaking after the minister, but I'm sorry, Minister. I do want to thank Yasir Ahmed. He will be leaving the department, and we are going to be standing on his shoulder that he has built the foundation for us. He's played a key role in the department, in various areas of the department. We know he's just going to go down the road, so we won't miss him too much, but we are definitely going to miss his leadership and his easy way of working with us. And I know his team is going to feel the loss, and we will try and make up for it. Bye, dankie, Yasir. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Where?
The city.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. Also, probably also personal just to thank, especially for me who used to have some particular kind of, when it comes to the government cars, that you'll be able to be accommodative. So thank you very much. All the best. It's not a loss. It's because we're still going to be in government. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you. And then for the committee, it's just probably 2 minutes that we could be able to deal with this. So as the department is trying to pack their staff, it's just 2 things. It's about what is it that you will be recommend or further information regarding to the specific meeting that we could be able to put it up. And then the last one is just about to adopt the minutes of the last meeting. So if any, thank you very much. So probably we can start with your the question on the blue dot, member Mansu. It's about that where you'll need more information in terms of what is the status quo and whether they are planning to it. You've got that one. And then any other?
Thank you, Chair. There are 2. The first one is just just to ensure we get those stats in terms of the traffic fines issued, moving versus non-moving violations. And then if we can refer the question regarding the government garage in Hope Street to infrastructure to see if it could move across and we could get a response potentially from that committee. Minister, thank you.
I think mine will really relate to the constitutional mandate, whether really the targets that they are really talking about, really are they addressing the key constitutional mandate? As we know that transport is a huge problem in this province. I think we got to engage around that. Thanks, Chair.
Member Heron, do you want to add on the, I'm not sure whether it's important for you, in regard to at what extent that the province devolved some of the powers to the municipalities? I'm not sure whether you want to add that part.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think it was answered to some extent, but it probably requires quite a detailed briefing as to what work is happening. Yeah, I think perhaps that is a follow-up. And then also there was an undertaking to brief us on the work being done on the fuel levy, and in particular where, if the provincial fuel levy is implemented, where that funding will go.
This question, the committee would guide, but I'm deeply interested on what I termed the Irish coffee scenario. One is deeply interested to understand even the related entities, the state of the related entities in respect to transformation. Or may pack it, or may include it, right? But whilst she responded to it, right? But the response was, for me, was not convincing, just acknowledged, that was it. Because one has an interest, even if you go to traffic, if you just go to see point, when you get there at a senior level, when you pass, it appears white male dominant. So I'm not sure, Chair. It may not be for now, but it's an issue which I think we need to zoom into. Thanks.
Thanks, but as you are saying, we don't have to put it here. Probably, maybe may even want to follow it up with an oral reply and have or interpellations or the debates. But what I'm hearing is that it's not necessarily is for now, for here. Okay, I think we have covered those 5 points in regard to the resolutions. And then the next one is about the minutes of the meeting of the 5th of July. It was virtual. It was about the election of the chairperson. I hope that we have read. Is there any proposal and the seconder for this? Member Masipa and Member Constable. I think the meeting is adjourned, but thank you very thank you very much. Now, lastly, which is not part of this, there's supposed to be, the next meeting was supposed to be the 30th, but the programming authority has changed it, which is, it would have meant that the next one, if it's still been, I think it was programmed, the whole programming is until it was the end of September. It was going to be the 13th of September. But we are trying to get a date within that week of the 30th, because one of the members has also asked us for some of the urgent and emergencies matters that they wanted the department to ask. So 30th is no longer there, but we are trying to get in terms of whether it's going to be the 27th, but it's going to be still that week. So we will possibly, yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you, Chair.